Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. My name is Tanner Dagenais, and I'm the host of Unleashing the Hero Within. I'm very grateful and thankful to have Kain White here on the line. He's an artist. He is a game developer. Or no, he's worked in game development, and he's a gamer. He lives in Australia. Where in Australia do you live?
Victoria, Central Victoria.
Victoria. Nice. Okay. Yeah. So I have a couple of friends in Australia as well. You know Nathan as well. Um, yeah, just really grateful to have you on today. Can you please just like introduce yourself a bit and kind of explain like, what got you into gaming in the first place?
Yeah, well, I've always played games. My first experience playing a game was at my uncle's house on his Atari 2600. So I'm showing my age a little bit. I'm 42 years old. Always been an artist or a drawer. I've always loved drawing, just pencils. I got a big packet of colored pencils, Derwent pencils, and that was just the best thing ever. I still have them. I still use them, and I've just always found the experience of gaming or playing a game as just something just deeply enjoyable and immersive, and something that really, to me, has grown up with me. So as if I look at a an old Nintendo, I have memories around that, and I think that nostalgia element is a big part of it for me.
Yeah.
And obviously moved into gaming development later on. I've also done a lot of stop motion animation by hand with charcoal and cutouts and things like that. So I've had a basic knowledge of how to animate characters and things like that. But I kind of have my own style as well. I'm not necessarily a cartoonist. So I've got this more, I guess, realistic element. I studied visual art at university, and I'm also a qualified teacher. I've been an art teacher and digital art and animation teacher for quite a few years. Not right now. I'm doing starting my own sort of businesses and things, and studying social media marketing right now. So um, I, I feel that your posts about the hero and all this sort of stuff really piqued my interest, and I have a background a little bit in reading about philosophy, and I don't know if you know any of the traditionalists, but this kind of commentary on society and on culture. And Joseph Campbell came up when you mentioned this hero idea with gaming and your own inner hero and things like that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting about all this stuff with you, Tanner.
Oh yeah, super excited. Yeah, thanks for doing the introduction there. Um, I'm really grateful to have you on. Just yeah, when you made that comment, I was like, man, I gotta get this guy on the podcast. Or we could have a good conversation about it. And I've seen your like name around for a while, like with our content, with like the previous posts and my other podcasts I was doing. So appreciate you showing some support there as well. But yeah, super excited to talk to you about your gaming journey. Um, so what do you think has been your like number one favorite game you've played?
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
hard.
I I have a top game. I
Okay.
have a top. I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's Deuce X or Deus X.
Oh yeah, just okay.
Uh, I actually have the big box version somewhere. Oh, it's in the cupboard. Oh, there it is. I'll go and get it. So you see that?
Oh yeah, Deus Ex. Yep. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So this is probably my favorite game of all time. I only have a few big box games, and that's one of them. So um, yeah, that's probably my favorite. It came along in '99, I think, but I didn't play it till about 2008. So it's quite an old game by then. Graphics are dated. It's still being modded and updated to this day
Right.
on mod database or mod DB. And you can buy an you can download upgraded versions of it. They had sequels and things, but that was the strongest one. It had this open world element, had a lot of really fascinating story. It had the role playing with the leveling up and the inventory, and yeah, it's just a perfect, beautiful game. I recommend it to anyone. if you can get past the graphics. And it's brutally difficult too, so that helps.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I know. I like some good difficult games like Dark Souls. I've been playing a lot of the Dark Souls games. Actually, I haven't played. I'll have to check out Deus Ex. I haven't played that, but I actually love that about the gaming community is like they like go back and mod the games. Like, so those are some of the best games that can be modded and like worked on, and just like you go back and you play the game, and it's like these people have put so much time and effort to like make the game even better. It's just amazing. I love that. Like, I know like Skyrim, like they mod like that game so much, or like I don't know if you're ever like a big Pokemon gamer, but like all like the ROM hacks you can play online now, like it's crazy. You just go back, like there's this one game called Pokemon Infinite Fusion where you can like fuse two different Pokemon together like throughout the game. Like it's just so cool. I just love that the gaming community comes together and like kind of builds that kind of stuff together and like shares it with each other. That's one of the things I love about the gaming community.
Yeah, and the modding, I imagine there's a lot of game developers who have cut their teeth in modding games. So you've already got an infrastructure there, you've got a foundation to work from, so you can just modify that.
Yep.
I'm not a coder, I'm an artist, and I'm the visual guy and the story guy and all that in our projects. But my first experience with game dev is I was modding Doom 2
Oh, nice.
maps. I was adding pictures to the walls in maps and making Duke Nukem 3D levels
Okay.
and modding the configuration files, so you get like the explosions of the grenades is stronger and more. It sounds a bit sick. More parts come out when they explode, and I actually crashed my computer. It was an old 486 with 8 MB of RAM, and I felt satisfied because I made so many parts come out with a pipe bomb that it actually froze my computer. It blue screened my computer, and I felt just a weird sense of satisfaction out of that. So yeah, that's sort of how far back it goes for me in the game development sense. So it's been a natural progression to move into this, and to be honest, a bit of a I guess a bucket list thing to say one day I'd like to make a game, but it's not that simple.
Yeah.
It's its own hero's journey. Yeah. So yeah, where would you like to head with this? Because there's quite a few different directions.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I actually that's really cool that you're been in game development for a while. I didn't realize to the extent you've been in. So you worked on well, you mentioned Doom 2. You mentioned what was the other game as well?
Duke Nukem
Oh,
3D.
Duke Nukem. Oh yeah, definitely heard that game. Played it a bit. Yeah, that's so cool. So how was it working like on those games? Was there like, I know like in your comment on my post, you talked about how there was like some struggles with like trying to balance, like different aspects of the game to make sure that people, are interested in the game, but it's not too hard, but it's still challenging enough. So, it sounds like you were doing more of the artwork there. So are you also worked in like some like the balancing portions of it, or what was going on there?
Yeah, so a bit of background for the more recent projects. My friend and I, Michael, he's the programmer. We work with the Unity engine, and he codes in C# language, for those of you who know what that is. And he said to me one day, "Hey, you've done a lot of art, you've done a bit of animation and stuff. We used to work at a supermarket together, and we'd work together in the same section and just talk about whatever, mainly games all day long." He's a big Dark Souls fan too, actually.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we started just. He started. I think we stopped working together. We went our separate ways with work, but we stayed in touch and used to hang out. And he just said to me one day, "I'm doing this game development course." So he's done a diploma in game development through a place in Melbourne, and he basically said, "Oh, I just need some sprites, some assets. Would you throw some together for me?" And I thought, "Oh, okay, why not? I've done a little bit of Photoshop. How hard can it be?" And it started off just a few sprites, and then I just got obsessed with it and started just sending him more and more things. And I look back at the way they were, and they were bad. They were incredibly bad. But both of us were kind of in this mindset of, oh, well, we're just doing something for ourselves. We're doing something different. And I enjoyed the challenge of trying to learn how to make sprites that were usable in a game, but also aware that there's a lot of veterans in the field who are really successful. And it was sort of that you don't know what you don't know kind of naivety that we had. So we started the game. Really, it just ramped up pretty quickly into a fairly serious project, and built it from the ground up. A side-scrolling platformer that started off just very simple. Press spacebar to jump, shoot straight ahead. Enemies come from one side, you're on the other, on a level plane. And I just started thinking about level design and reading about level design, and realizing that the art and the animation and the character and everything has to mesh with the level design as well. So we together started talking about, I guess, who does what in the project. And because there's only two of us, we're going to have to do a lot more than just one job. So, if I just made the sprites or I just did the animations, that would be, a much bigger team. So we started sharing the roles, and that went on for a few years, really, just in our spare time. And we had a lot of technical issues with Unity, and Michael was still developing his own skills in using C# and Unity and the functions that it has. It has just an incredible amount of functions, and I haven't even scraped the surface of it. So there was some sort of, life gets in the way, and we took it all the way to getting to early access on Steam. And that in itself was an experience in getting a game even to that point where it's ready to be on a Steam store. There's a lot of steps in that and a lot of requirements, and it was overwhelming at the time. And then we just kind of burnt out, and the game was embarrassingly bad at that point. And then we left it for about 2 years, I think, maybe longer. And it was just recently, probably October last year, I went to the PAX festival in Melbourne, and I don't know if you know what it is, but for anyone listening, it's a pop culture gaming festival, kind of like E3, I guess, but it's got tabletop games and cosplay and all this kind of stuff as well. So it's a bit of a merge. It's at the exhibition centre. It's a massive thing. And I stumbled across the indie game section, which was a bunch of small developers who were making games and promoting them as early access or download the demo. And they had, laptops set up so you could play them, which was fantastic. And I got to just chat with some of them. And at this point, our game's completely on the back burner. I'd moved on and was doing a lot of other things, a lot of digital art related things for some of my own other business ideas. And I do a lot of educational resources and things for visual art. So I was learning a lot more about digital art and vector art. And my friend was continuing to make his own games, and he released a little phone game for Google Play. And so he was extending his skills as well. And so we decided to come back. I just said, hey, Mick, our game's not that bad. I've been to PAX, and I think it needs to be visually improved, but I think we've still got something to work with. And I guess that feeling of leaving something unresolved it always bugged me. I personally feel it's important for yourself, or for your self-esteem or your soul or something, to kind of finish what you start. And that might take a long time, but kind of like the hero's journey, you'll get something unexpected if you keep going. Or like in a game itself, where when you start, you're kind of weak and you're unaware of what's out there, and then as you progress, you find things that will challenge you but also help you. And so in the sense, game development from our point of view was this journey, and it tested our patience. I don't think it tested our friendship. I think it tested our relationship abilities and our communication abilities. I myself have probably the things I've struggled with the most are a level of anxiety, like a baseline level anxiety, and anger issues or rage, and especially when I was younger. And so these sorts of things have been great for being able to challenge myself. So seeing 10 hours work disappear because you didn't do something properly in Unity and it didn't transfer properly, it can really test your patience. But what it does is it really helps you to lift your game and be organized and back up everything and best practices, which everyone goes through it, and then you learn. So yeah, it's the whole journey, and we're still not finished. It's still going, but yeah, it's been a long journey, but it's unrecognizable to what it used to be anyway. So
it's still on Steam right now in alpha?
yeah, it's in early access. We added a it's called Lost Assassin. And so we wanted like an 80s inspired kind of sci-fi game with this spaceman, and yeah, we've redone all the graphics and everything. We've added a lot more things. Only recently, in the last few days, Michael's been redoing the player character, the controls. We applied for a grant through Screen Australia, and that would have been amazing if we got it. But I think they have a problem with games that have shooting in them.
Right.
I think because the government body, they don't like shooting, but they gave us some harsh but really good feedback, and we've been working on that feedback ever since, which is another big element of game development is feedback. Please step in if I'm talking on too long a tangent too.
Oh, you're good. No, it's super interesting.
Yeah. Another thing, again, I'll talk about the hero's journey with gaming. And I've been a visual artist for 20-something years, and I've had exhibitions and things like that. And the difference between visual art fans, like people who go into a gallery and see a painting or something, is they go, oh yeah, okay, that's interesting, and they walk off. With a game, you're creating an artificial problem. So you're creating an artificial hero's journey in a way, depending on the game. Some it literally is a hero's journey, like a role-playing game or a open world game, as opposed to say a racing game, like an online racing game. One of the games I was hooked on, my partner had to step in and say, hey, just chill with this game. It was called Live for Speed. It's not Need for Speed. It's called Live for Speed.
Okay.
And it's a racing simulator. The graphics aren't great, but it's a very small community game. And I got addicted to hot lapping on just particular tracks, and I just had to get better and better and better. And I just spent hours, bought a steering wheel and everything. I still look back with fondness of that time, but the hero's journey for me in that was, getting better every single movement, and gamers understand that. There's people who do speed running and stuff, this sort of thing. But yeah, I guess we wanted to create that in our game as well. We wanted to create that sense of hero's journey and progression, which is really important to gaming. I lost my train of thought a little bit there, but yeah, it really has come a long way, and yeah, I'd recommend anyone who wants to get into game development. It's not for the faint of heart, but you do learn a lot along the way. Oh, the feedback, that's right. So with art, people can just walk away. With gaming, you're creating an immersive problem, an adventure. And one of the things you read in feedback or in, say, the Steam reviews or anything is there's this level of harshness to it where these people have put their heart and soul into this game, and people feel actually offended when the game doesn't quite balance right, or there'll be like a cheap kind of a cheap shot, like an enemy can get you from outside the screen, or or a difficulty spike, or it's boring, or so all these things play into this. I believe this inner kind of blueprint of what we desire in a game is that hero's journey, where it's just difficult enough that you'll want to progress, which means that there's the risk to reward ratio is there, but it's not too difficult that you'll give up and pull out and rage quit, or lose interest and never play it again. And so some of the feedback we've received has been extremely hard to take, but at the same time, I encourage it because we want it to be better, and we've got other projects we'd like to do in the future. So bigger projects or better projects that we can apply that same learned principles to. Things like, oh, what's the point? There's no point playing this game. Or the character is really janky. And we sit there and look at it and go, I don't see it. And then you ask them to explain and you see it, what they mean. The controls are janky, or it sticks to this, or just any feedback is massively valuable. But it is really hard to the first few times to see it and to admit it. And it's kind of embarrassing. Like, I look at the old game, and we had it on early access, and it's a weird situation because early access isn't really a thing anymore. Sorry, you might see a cat's tail. I've got a cat that jumps up. Yeah. So you'll get a lot of feedback, but the worst feedback is no feedback, because you don't know, you're left guessing. And my partner is a writer, a short story fiction writer, and her work is not what would be considered mainstream. It doesn't fit into really any categories, but they're beautiful kind of fables. And she'll send a story off, or she has sold books, and she says, I haven't heard much feedback. And so instantly, when you say I haven't heard any feedback, you instantly assume it's bad. It's, oh, they hate it, and they just don't want to tell me. It's kind of like person has BO, like body odor. You don't want to be the one to tell them, And so when within that context, getting that feedback is really important, even if it is harsh criticism. And actually, I kind of love it. Like, I actually love getting a bit of harsh criticism and talking about getting into a dialogue with someone who actually is harsh enough to tell you straight up, because they're going to save you a lot of time. And as far as personal development goes, it helps you as well really dig deep into why are you doing it? Like, what did you want to get out of that? Are you still stuck just doing drawings that you show your parents or whoever, and they stick it on the refrigerator and tell you how great you are? Or do you want to get better? So it comes down to, again, that personal development, which is which you can't, there's some things you can't fake. And so say a weightlifter can't fake what they can lift, but with creative things, it's a little bit more complicated. And in gaming, the adventure of a game is really, is just getting that balance right. And that takes hours. Like, every time we make one adjustment, we have to readjust a lot of other things in the balance element. So right now, two of our enemy creatures, we had them so they just shoot straight ahead and not up and down at the player. And so I kind of designed the level so the player couldn't exploit that, like they couldn't snipe them from above. But I personally felt like this is going to be a big challenge to get it so it balances just right. And you could still exploit it, because we want the enemies to chase you and things like this. We want it to be a little bit more AI, oriented, not just set paths. So a lot of side-scrolling games, that the enemies just work on a set path. So in Unity, you can set a path and you can set them, barriers, and they'll just patrol between that. But I'm butchering the coding side of it here, by the way. Michael does the coding, but he's basically made it so they have a set patrol, and we can set it up like that. And then if they send out a raycast, so it's like a beam that if it touches the character, the collider that's on the character, it will change into another mode. So and then we can determine what that mode is, how far away it is, and all this sort of stuff. And balancing it all out in the maps is really it's a very time-consuming process, and getting it to feel immersive is also a real balancing act. And one thing it has given me, all of this, is a huge appreciation for games. It's actually my love of games has grown because I've tried to make one. Like try and play a guitar, and you'll learn to respect, Eddie Van Halen or someone like that when you see how hard it is, and how many technical challenges there are. So, but we upgraded the enemies so they don't just shoot straight forward. They track the player. So it's all side scroll, and the actual gun will track the player and shoot the projectile. And it has to be a projectile, because if it's just raycast guns, like some people used to complain about the machine gunner in Doom 2, in the old Doom 2, because he just shoots you from a distance with a raycast gun, so instantly the bullet doesn't miss, it hits you. As soon as he sees you, he's going to start hitting you. So we had to balance out the that side of things with the enemies being able to track you and shoot you, so they look smarter. As a piece of feedback was, it would be nice for the enemies to be smarter. I thought, we can make them smarter, but the problem is, how do we not make it too difficult? So now the offset was that they're bullet sponges. So the player could shoot at the enemy, but they can only shoot ahead, like in one direction. Now he can shoot you wherever you are, as long as he sees you. And now we're going to have to drop the health of the enemies, because they're too strong, and the first level is an absolute nightmare now. So the balancing of the game is a really interesting thing. It's a fascinating thing. So,
I think that's super interesting, because as someone who's never worked in game development, and then like seeing all like the games that are like really struggling with balancing, like I play League of Legends. I also play I had bought Diablo 4, and I'm not sure if you've been following Diablo 4 recently, but there's been like this whole like big thing where they like nerfed a whole bunch of the classes, and there was like some major outrage, and like a lot of people just quit the game straight up. So I can only imagine, just balancing games like at that level, like, and then actually doing it yourself gives you like a whole different perspective. Like, hey, it's not as easy as it may seem. You change one thing, and then you gotta address something else, and you gotta change something else. It's like a snowball effect, right? Like everything is, you have to look at like holistically, like how does this change, like this small little change, like this one damage increase affect everything else, So
and it's like the butterfly effect. It's you upset the balance, and it's super important. Like people will tell you straight up whether it's imbalanced or not. And I play Mech Warrior Online. That's my game. It's a pretty small audience, but I've always loved the BattleTech Mech Warrior games, especially Mech Warrior, where you can control the mech. And they do weapon adjustments still. They still update it. They actually rejuvenated the game a little bit recently, and released a single player Mech Warrior 5, which brought me in. I hadn't played Mech Warrior Online. And and as soon as they nerf and buff things, the nerds like me, and there's others that are way more switched on with this weapon statistics, they get in there and make builds that will exploit the balance. And there's a little bit of criticism at the moment with the game company. Look, it's a free-to-play game. They have to earn money. So there's a bit of a problem. They've created paid mechs, so you buy a mech for money. And when they came, there's two that they've done about 6 this year, but 2 have come out and they're just massively overpowered with particular builds, and it's not the builds that they come with. So all the nerds get in there and go, right, how can we exploit this weapon cooldown and this range and this velocity? And I think, man, this is so much like our game. Like, there'll be people who, I hope one day, if people play it, that will try and exploit the game. And yeah, so there's that as well. Like, you don't want a game to be, where someone can wall hack and end up at the end of the game. Or, get into the code and find how you can get infinite whatevers. Another person asked for, when the player runs, whether they could sprint. And I thought, well, this is only level 1. We want progression. So we want to be able to buff the other player as the enemies are buffed as well. And not in a dynamic sense, it's pretty complicated, but at least level 1, there's this, and this. Level 2, there's this, and this, and some options as well. So we've got, an inventory system, and we're working on a skill tree of sorts. But again, it's how do you keep one interesting thing is, how do you keep a game interesting when you're nerfed at the beginning of the hero's journey? How do you keep it interesting enough that people want to progress, and have enough of a carrot there to dangle that, oh, we just need to find this other thing in order to progress. But why? Like, what's the point? What's in it for me? So yeah, keeping that in mind with the player is really, I think it's helped to in our game development journey. We've sort of come to a place where we're not attached to the game necessarily. Like, you do put your heart and soul into it, but we're not attached to it in that. What we want to assume is, I've got in mind the most critical, selfish person. When I'm thinking about the game and people playing it, I'm thinking of the most critical, harsh, selfish person is playing my game. What are they going to say? And because I only play a game, I've got 1,000 games in my Steam library. I only play a game that I want to play. I'm selfish. What's in it for me? And I think it's really good to keep that in mind, especially when creating anything. Like, it might be writing a book, it might be creating a podcast, it might be making a game. If you're creating something for others to use or enjoy, could be anything, making a table, making a mug, anything, is what's in it for me. So I don't actually care about you, I care about me.
Right.
And we can say we care about others, but ultimately it's a bit black and white. But what's in it for me is a big principle with gaming, because you're creating an immersive kind of fake adventure. And I think more and more, people are indoors a lot more since the lockdowns and everything. A lot of people spend a lot more time indoors, and the young generation, I've heard that the younger generation is the indoor generation, and I think that's a little bit harsh. I know a lot of kids who are outdoorsy kids, but they definitely spend a lot more time indoors on entertainment, phones, and things than we used to, purely because we didn't have them. There's no other reason. I would have been hooked as well. We're no better, that's for sure. But yeah, that the idea of the hero's journey being part of a person's personal life, I think that's probably more important now than ever, like with people spending a lot more time indoors. So I don't know, I can elaborate on that and bring in the context of the hero's journey, or we can talk about something else.
Yeah, definitely. I think we should definitely talk about the hero's journey and kind of like I think how we should kind of dive into it is like, how do you make it so that you're interested? Like, I think you and me both know as gamers, like it'd be really easy to kind of like just be kind of like stuck into a game and like, oh man, this game is so much fun, and then kind of avoid going into the real world and like doing the things you need to do, right? So how do you balance that so that you are going to go out into the real world and get the things you need to get done? Because I mean, I know myself, I've done the same thing, and I think we were talking about before we started the podcast, like you've done the same thing as well. So I know you mentioned the one with the driving, that Need for Speed. No, it wasn't Need for Speed. What was it?
Live for Speed.
Oh, you Live for Speed, right? Yeah.
Live for Speed,
that you've done the same. So like, how are you able to balance those two things now?
Yeah, well, I think self-awareness, and recognizing before we started recording, I personally believe it's probably fairly common knowledge in some circles, but an addiction is it's a cover for something else. Yeah. So anything can be addictive. There's people who collect nail clippings, like anything. It's what is it covering up, or why am I refusing to progress? So in gaming, you've got a controlled, artificial, safe hero's journey, and if that's great, it's entertaining, it's a personal challenge. But if it's becoming your life, then it's replacing your real hero's journey. So Joseph Campbell, with his ideas and what triggered my interest with your posts and your new direction, is he talks about the hero's journey is our lives. It's been the same story told a million times. Is every person who's born, from the moment they're born, and actually he talks about birth as well, like coming from what he calls, you're in the womb and you're more or less an aquatic creature. You're breathing fluid, or you're not breathing at all. You're taking oxygen from your mother's blood, to being born and entering the world is a hero's journey. It's a heroic, painful, probably traumatic experience for everyone. So the first birth into childhood is that beginning of the hero's journey, and the hero's journey that's told is hundreds of thousands of stories. He uses Star Wars, the first Star Wars, as an example of a modern kind of sci-fi interpretation of the hero's journey, and the journey of Luke Skywalker from being a kid, to a man or an adult, is that similar thing to in a game. You've got a problem. You're a child. You've got your parents or your guardians looking after you. You're pretty well helpless. Like humans, especially, we're an extremely helpless creature when we're a baby, compared to, like, I live in countryside and we have cows and things out. I can see cows out the window right now, and when a cow's born, it's on its feet within minutes. We take how long? 18 months or something? I don't know. I don't have children, but they take a long time to get upright, and even a lot longer time to look after themselves. And so the idea with the hero's journey is that we go out and become adults by, say, in a traditional culture, like a tribal culture, the boys will go off with the men, with the elders, and they will endure some sort of challenge, often life-threatening, or what they call a rite of passage. Yeah. It can involve a physical change as well. It can be, tattooing, like body modification of some sort. It can be cutting the hair off. In our culture, in Western culture, the boys, if you look in old photographs, like black and white, the boys always wear the shorts. And then when they become a man, I don't remember what age it is, when they first start providing for the family, they'll wear pants. So there's a definite difference. Now, it's harder for men because we don't have any we don't have a really obvious physical change. We don't have a menstrual cycle. And so we also don't have a natural rhythm with that. So I'm not going to get into those debates with gender or anything like that, but I'm speaking almost, verbatim on what Joseph Campbell talks about with the reason we have myths and the reason we have rites of passage. And I've seen in recent years a lot of like men's groups, things like that. And I think that ties in really deeply into the modern, why games are so fascinating to people. I think Joseph Campbell, he passed away in the early 2000s, but he even mentions video games as a hero's journey. So so it just really piqued my interest, this idea of how can we bring games into this personal growth. It is dangerous. It's kind of a sword. It's because it can be addictive, but if we can ask ourselves, why am I avoiding my life, which is actually the real hero's journey? And I think there's good reasons. Like, life's unpredictable, and there's no. We can make ourselves believe that, okay, it'll all work out, but things happen. People pass away. We have disasters. We have tragedies and things like that, and that's where all your disorders come from. Is psychological things like anxiety and depression and things like that. And and sometimes we need to step out and just tap out and I know people. I've got quite a few friends, when they go through a crisis, they back away and all of a sudden they're hooked on a game, maybe a crafting kind of open world game. And I think if people understood that, they're doing their thing, they're off on their own little personal journey. And I know just as many people who, as soon as they have a problem, they go camping. They pack their car up Friday afternoon after work, they're straight gone. They're going to the wilderness to be by themselves. Now, they might not acknowledge that even. I think that's a deep thing we have. It's like a inner blueprint. So maybe gaming is in a built-up area in a city or urban space. I think about people in Asia and places like that really built up. Where does that person go if they have an inner desire for that adventure or that personal quest? And I have no doubt that gaming developers, big ones like Blizzard and Bethesda and many others, I have no doubt they fully understand the concepts of the hero's journey and the psychological impact of achieving something.
Oh yeah.
Like the sounds and the colors, and when you reach that next level and it splashes color all over the screen and music. They use it in pokey machines. It's all very linked into our psychology, the reward thing, and we use it in education as well. Like, you do a good job, you get a little sticker, a little gold star for a job well done. So it ties into that as well. But sometimes in life out there, we don't get that instant reward, and so there's that whole idea of delayed gratification as well, which is another fascinating thing. And I think that's where understanding what's the meaning of why do I want to challenge myself? Why would I? Like, I could just have a comfortable, easy life and just, or I could just go on welfare or whatever and just chill. Or I could challenge myself and why do people challenge themselves at all? Like, why do we do anything?
Yeah. No, that's I think the hero's journey is really, really important. And actually that's why I built like my whole program around it, right? This is because like it is so important, like finding your purpose and like why is your why, what is your main quest? Like what does that progression look like? And I think there's a reason why so many like men and even women nowadays are drawn to gaming, right? It's because you're right, like it has a lot of those things that like the dopamine fix. It has a clear set of goals, right? Like in life, oftentimes you may have one goal, but it's not broken down into each individual daily, like action that will get you to that main quest. Or in games, like you have a quest log now, right? You're like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this. Oh, I know if I kill this many boars, I'll level up to whatever level, then I'll have this unlocked. And you get that progression feeling really good from games. Where I think life, if we're not setting ourselves up with the same way in life, then we're gonna be like, well, it's not the same, right? It's not as fun, it's not as appealing. I think that's why so many people get kind of stuck in the gaming world, where they're just like, I can go in the gaming world and I can become successful, right? I can feel that progression, and I think that's what everyone does want to progress through life, step by step, because it feels really good. It feels really good to be like, oh yeah, I'm getting stronger, I'm getting more armor, I'm getting more stats. And I think it could be easy to be like thinking in life, well, I'm not making any progress, right? Like I worked out at the gym for like 2 weeks, I don't see anything, I don't see any difference, right? Or I gained some weight or something, right? So I think you're definitely spot on. Whereas it is a long term, like in real life, a lot of like the rewards you're gonna get are long term rewards, right? And our society has been so built around like the short term gratification, like take this pill and you'll feel better, right? The dopamine fixes from social media. It's like everything is just so short term, instant gratification now, that games are even more and more appealing now, because you can get that quick fix. You don't have to drive all the way into the mountains to escape from the world. You can just you can just go into your room, turn on the computer, and boom, you're already into a whole different world now, especially with like, Skyrim and all that. So I think there's the hero's journey is definitely built into a lot of games like you're talking about. There's no doubt in my mind that the like Blizzard and Bethesda and all of them have the hero's journey in mind.
Yeah, and game development in some ways is a game in itself. It's kind of like some games are. So I'm a PC gamer mainly, and some games are just, especially when they're on disc, it would be a game in itself, getting it going, like getting it to work.
Yeah.
And so by the time you get to the stage where you've got it running, your time's up. But yeah, it's very, I guess that setting out a challenge for yourself is the same. So say in a project, I've done a little bit of, I guess, project management, so creative projects and setting up exhibitions or doing music videos for people or for musical groups, and work collaboratively with people. And but one of the longest running collaborations is with Michael with the game. And I think that one thing you get out of it is that sense of personal fulfillment, that like we will never make, I don't want to sound negative, but we will never make the money back that we put into this, the time. But life isn't just about money.
Yeah.
And it's I don't really fall into that category. Like I don't have that desire to be wealthy. I'm not opposed to the idea, but I value my time on earth a lot more. And that's confronting for some people, like, because their own personal hero's journey is kind of like in World of Warcraft or whatever, is gathering loot or gathering gems or whatever. And so that collecting elements there. So it might be someone collecting, I don't know, basketball cards or whatever, or it might be collecting cars or houses or money or whatever, stocks. And that's fine, that's their journey. But I see time as currency in a sense. So in that time, since we've decided to reinvigorate the game, basically remade the whole thing from scratch. I've learned a lot more about Unity. I've learned a lot more about how to manage the scope of a project. And that's a big thing in game development is they always say, start simple, start small. Don't do your dream game the first time. Things that we could have listened to, but we didn't because we didn't know any better. And you hear that a lot. With big projects, you say to someone, would you have done, if you knew how much work it would be, would you have started? And of course, people say, no way. Or sometimes the first response is no way. I would never have taken on that if I knew it was going to take 10 years to complete. But if you tease out the follow-up response is often more along the lines of, well, I learned a lot. Like, where did it lead me? What was like the hero's adventure in the game? When you get to that section, it branches out. And if you're not participating or trying or listening to that person who might be a consumer of games or of movies or whatever, but they find it outrageous to become a game developer or an artist because it's not practical. It's not practical. But that's a big part of this this journey that you're on. If you're a creator, like you've started a podcast and you've started small, I imagine it would have taken a lot of personal belief in yourself. And I don't know people, your family or anyone, but the rite of passage of anyone creating something new is that you will have a lot of comments, and often people might joke about it, or they'll, criticize or say, what are you doing? Can you just start becoming whatever that is in their mind that's their definition of what that hero looks like. So in their mind, a life well lived might be security, looking after the practical needs, and then, acquiring whatever. And I'm not criticizing any of that, but at the end of the day, you're the one who has to feel as though you've lived your life the way you feel is the best way to live it, and only you know that. So that's where I've always been into art and drawing and painting and stuff, and I value that for myself as a thing, but I also love sharing it with people. And I've done a lot of teaching, and I plan to do more teaching. And I feel like my service to the world is to provide the ability to share my experience and my love for creativity, and to prop people up. And the biggest thing is that, like say teaching students, like young people, like teenagers, they want to have instant success, but what they really want is a challenge that's worth fighting. So they want, say a drawing, there's a white piece of paper in front of you, and you've got these pencils over here, and you've got your friend who loves art sitting across from you, and they're good at drawing, and they're maybe naturally gifted or whatever, doesn't matter. You're there with your blank piece of paper, and you see this pattern where they do a quick sketch and then they'll hate it and they'll screw it up and throw it in the bin. And that happens without fail. There's always a few in a class who are like that. And so there's a word that I didn't hear until I became a teacher: resilience. And we didn't have that. We didn't have a word for that. But we did have the same challenges of comparison. So there'll always be someone, if you're going to compare, there's always someone who's better. There's always someone who's, or in your mind, is better. But they don't have the challenges that you have. They have their own challenges. So there's that saying, comparison is the death of joy. So comparison is the death of joy. And doing art, I've had periods like everyone else where I feel overwhelmed, especially with the internet, where the world's become so much smaller, and I'll look at painters and think, wow, how did that person do that? And knowing myself, I would never, that voice is there, I'll never be able to do that. And then I just feel deflated, like, wow, I've got to pay my bills, but I really want to do great art, and I love it, so much. And I quit for a while, and then come back, and I think I had a bit of a realization that it's not about the product, it's about the journey. And it sounds really cliched, but the personal quest that I want to do art. I want to explore, create creative ideas, and life, to me, life is very, very dull without something creative. And in recent years, like, I've done a lot of traditional art, paintings and drawings and printmaking, but I've gotten into digital art as well. So I consider game development a big part of that, and learning a program and getting your head around it, and the controls and the buttons and shortcuts, and looking at tutorials, and then ending up being good enough at a program that you can provide assistance to others is a very empowering thing, and just sticking at it. So yeah, breaking down that dopamine requirement. If you can break through that, where you need that daily or hourly or minutely instant feedback, and actually be prepared to work hard and push through, like, sort of delay that need for that, which things like social media and all that sort of thing, they're not helping at all. And we could easily say, oh, well, it's social media's fault. But what we've got is an opportunity. This is probably a meta sort of thing, but we've got an opportunity right now to better ourselves in the face of a huge amount of distractions, a huge amount of rabbit holes we could go down, or social worlds we can get into. And I've done the same thing. Like, I've deleted my Twitter account a couple of times because I just can't help myself. I need to flesh out things with people, or some may call it argue, or playing games, getting addicted, and then going, all right, instead of saying the game's the problem, what can I get out of this? What little piece of knowledge can I get out of it? And that's all about the hero's journey. Is the birth is, you're a child and you need to be looked after, and then when you become an adult, okay, the biggest thing for us is we have to go and work. We have to have a job and earn money. That's a big part. But to actually say, not only am I going to earn money, I'm going to make the world kind of my place for adventure, and learn and get something valuable from it. So embracing the idea that life's unpredictable, and that there are lots of experiences I'm going to have that I won't be able to predict, but I'll have the inner working to get through it. So preparing yourself for a tough time, or an unexpected side quest or whatever is. And it's funny, we actually, even my partner does it. Sometimes we'll in life have a person, or a person appears, and I just started saying it years ago. So they're like a boss, like a boss fight, and I may or may not said that about family members as well, but generally it's helping contextualize. So, and I've even heard my partner say it before. It's like a boss, like Bowser at the end of Mario or something. But the boss is actually in you, like the challenge is in you. So I had a personal experience where, in a workplace, I had a guy, an older guy, who was pushy and ran off at the mouth a bit much, and just had a personal thing, a power thing going on. And I could acknowledge that there was definitely a power thing going on with this guy. And I had nothing to prove. I'm just there to earn my money. And anyway, I spoke to someone who said, look, you need to set them straight, but you also need to know that it's not personal. And so I've done a little bit of stuff on, his name's Marshall Rosenberg. I think Oprah Winfrey supported him for a while. Non-violent communication, it's called. And some of it's rooted in sort of behavioral psychology, I guess. But it's this idea of, we have basic needs. So we have food, warmth, and shelter as our basic essential needs. But then we have a lot of other needs, like being cared for, being heard, being respected, being valued, which are not necessary for survival, but are important for our well-being. And yeah, I had this guy who was just talking over the top of me, being smart, making disrespectful statements to me and others. And one day I thought, right, today's the day I'm going to say something. But the trick is that I've found is, when you speak to them and tell them what you feel, when they say, hey, look, I'm really sorry, I had no idea, which is, I've had 3 situations like this in my life with work colleagues. I just basically turned around and said, can you just shut the F up? And I'm sick of hearing you speak over the top of me. It's disrespectful. And then I just walked away. Thought, I've given him exactly what he needs to know where he stands right now. But the next part was when he came up eventually, because I'd never spoken to him like that before. And I realized it was on me to actually assert that I don't appreciate being made fun of for these reasons. And it was the power thing, micromanaging. Mm. And I think I said something like, I know how to do my job. You don't have to keep telling me. And when he came up and apologized, I said, hey, that's fine. I think it was actually my responsibility to tell you where I was with that. So, I apologized for not being clearer, and never had a problem ever again after that. So for me, it was like, I see this guy as like a boss, like not a boss like a manager, but like Bowser,
Yeah.
And I've got to fight him, I've got to do around it. And sometimes we don't want to, like we put it off because we don't want to be rude, or we don't want to be, could end up in a big fight, or I could get fired, like my actual boss was standing there at the time, and I dropped the F-bomb. I'd never dropped the F-bomb before at work in that context, but I'd had enough. And sometimes I think it was a big journey for me to get to that place where I needed to assert myself. But then years later, I became a school teacher. And if you don't know how to assert yourself in a classroom, someone else will. If you don't know how to manage a group of teenagers, not boss them around, you hope that they manage themselves eventually. But if you don't know how to say, all right, I'm actually, I'm in charge of this group and I'm responsible for them, and I'm not doing it for me, I'm doing it for the ones that don't like being picked on. If you don't step up, someone else will, and it'll be a 13-year-old, and you don't want that for anyone, because they're not ready. You need to model that behavior. So in that sense, overcoming that challenge, which I've had to repeat a few times, it gets easier every time. That enabled that part of the hero's journey. That enabled me to be able to assert myself in a different setting, and to be able to see it and recognize it for what it was. So that was a really, I guess, for me, a good example of that idea of the hero's journey. And your whiteboard, I am enough, is massive as well. It's that at the end of the day, you have to believe that, because you'll find comparisons everywhere. And now, with, we've got Instagram and all these things, but we've got AI filters, and we're kind of moving into this new challenge of an incredibly artificial world that's beyond anything we've ever had to comprehend. And we're the first people that we know of who have had to confront this world where, there might be young people who can't live physically in the world because they don't have their AI filter showing their avatar, their face, and with its filters modifying the proportions and everything. So, you know, it's really important for people like yourself to be able to provide an alternative way of thinking for people in this world, because it's the challenge is great, but also the potential for realizing what really makes us who we are. Like, what are we all about? Why are we here? You know, these sorts of things. And yeah, and then tying into the hero's journey, I think is a super important thing, because it's ancient. It's been around forever, as long as we can record.
Yeah, definitely. No, I love your story about like how you dealt with it, and I mean, I think you're totally right. Like a lot of people, and I like how you said, you know, I'm sorry because I didn't, you know, tell you how I actually felt, because you know, I think a lot of people kind of keep what they really want to say inside, because they're, you know, they're scared. Like fear is like one of the number one deterrents to going out and progressing in the real world. I think that's why also people like dive into video games, because it's a lot less scary. You know, oh, if you die in a video game, so what? You can restart, you can respawn, right? If you make a mistake in real world, you're gonna get criticized. Maybe your family is gonna disown you, right? What happens if I make a fool of myself in front of that girl and she never talks to me again, right? Or what happens if I say that to my boss and I get fired, right? So yeah, I think there is a lot of great information you just provided there. I've just been like, you know, sometimes just being truthful. I think most of the time, actually, almost probably 100% of the time, being truthful and being like, not being like always. There's times where you have to, you know, you have to say like, just fuck off, right? But like sometimes you can say it in better ways too. Like it doesn't always have to be that brunt. But like being truthful is gonna be what's gonna help someone and gonna change your life, right? If you're always just gonna be like, oh no, I don't want to say that, or you know, I could do this, but I'm not gonna do it because I might fail. Like you just gotta be truthful with yourself. Like, do I want to do this? Yes. Then go out and do it. Like for me, like public speaking, if you would have asked me like 5 years ago if I would have been hosting podcasts or like making social media stuff, I would say like laughed in your face, like, yeah, right. Like I was always that kid in class who was like, you know, for like presentations and stuff, I'd be like shaking, kind of stuttering a bit, heart thumping a lot, like starting to sweat. And I just had to look myself in the mirror. I mean, it was when I started kind of on my own hero's journey that I started to realize it's actually not that scary. I've been letting my own thoughts get into my own head, right? I've been letting all those fears get in my way, when really what I want to do is go out and help people, right? So, and how am I going to do that if I'm not going to be able to talk to people, if I'm not going to be able to show my face? So I think it's really important in this today's day and age too, like just like you said, like all the Instagram like filters and stuff, all the avatars, to just not be scared of showing who you are, of being authentic. I think that's what the world's desperately needing now, is more just authentic people. It's like whenever someone's like authentic and the, you know, being their authentic selves, they always like blow up usually on social media, because you know people are looking for that, right? People are looking for just people who are more, you know, real. And that's why, you know, I love you coming on the podcast and love hosting this podcast. It's just, it allows people to just kind of understand that, hey, you know, we're all gamers, we're all, you know, living through life, and we all have our own struggles, but there are ways to move past these hard boss fights. And I love that you talked about like the Bowser fight with your boss, because actually that's definitely like I've talked about that in my own program and some of the content I do. So like that's like one of the ways we can use gaming to make our lives better, right? We can think of like, hey, my boss is like a boss fight. It's Bowser, right? I gotta take on Bowser at some point. Like I might need to go level up a bit, or you know, build my confidence before I do so. But you know, you gotta take it on at some point if you want to progress farther into the game. So yeah, I mean, I love that you shared that, and I've been seeing when you sat down, I saw your painting behind you. I know we talked about your paintings, and that one looks really cool. Could you show it to us?
Oh, the skull one.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not finished.
it looks really cool. And I saw some of your other paintings online. Oh yeah, that's awesome.
It needs a lot of work. I'm doing a pattern and things things, but I did a series of astronauts.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because the game character is also inspired by the astronauts. But yeah, I had this fascination. It was actually a big part of, I guess, rejuvenating my love for art in my sort of early 30s. I was doing a lot of things, but sort of just doing it to sell, just to sell work. So
Mm-hmm.
sort of less challenging work conceptually. And so I got to a point where I've always loved science fiction and, space and things like that, and games, of course, a lot of sci-fi games. So I thought, you know what, I need to start doing work that's more about my interests, and I just have to say, I stop thinking about selling work so much, and just do the work that I want to do. So I started just experimenting with with astronauts and things, and getting photos off, NASA website, like black and white ones of astronauts and things like that. And I sent a little painting to a friend who I respected greatly, and he's passed away a few years ago. He was 57 or so a little bit older, but a bit of I guess, a mentor as well, a creative sort of mentor. And he would give it to me straight. Like, he would tell me, sometimes he was wrong, but he would tell me honestly what he thought, and that was something I respected greatly. So I went from doing sort of, more conservative work that would sell on a gallery wall to getting more into this science fiction related space art. And I ended up putting enough. He said, this is fantastic. I'm not sure what you're doing, but I think you're heading into a new direction. And there's this thing about artists, like especially at art school, where I've always struggled with it, even now, where you're still learning the basics, like even at university, you're still learning the basics. You're still new. Like, I was 18 when I started university, and like most people who start university, I didn't know much, really. Like, looking back, I didn't know much about the world, or I still don't. But I felt this pressure that you have to have a style. You have to lock yourself into a style, and it's quite challenging to change style, or to not do what the sort of I guess the group is doing. Like, it's very heavily influenced by the lecturer. And anyway, I was stuck in that for years, and started just losing interest, really. And then I started making the space art, put a show together, enough for a show. It was about 15 artworks, and booked the space and had a launch. It sold, most of the work sold, and people were excited about this new this new art, and something spoke to them in it. And I think it's what you said. It's about being authentic, and also overcoming that doubt, and because it's there, it will always be there. You can rely on that. Like, it's always going to be sitting there, questioning what you're doing. Even every moment you'll have a sense of doubt, but you'll, like what you were saying with your, you didn't think you'd ever become a podcaster, but the important thing was you had the desire to do it to help others. And and you've probably developed a lot of skills that you would never have developed. And you don't know where that will go. Like, that, who knows what direction your life will take, because you've initiated that quest. And it's like a skill. Once you get practice that, okay, I'm starting something new here, I'm going to have challenges, but I'm going to draw on my ability to persist. And one of the biggest things with art was always this sense of comparison, I guess. So yeah, you're right. And I find it amusing, like on Instagram and things like that, there's people who, very attractive people, men and women, and they're trying to combine elements. Like, they've got themselves, and they work on themselves a lot, and then they've got their artwork in the background. And I think, it's interesting. It never occurred to me to hit the gym and, get the bronze tan, and stand in front of an artwork, promoting my artwork. so it's more about influencer culture and personal branding, and so in the personal branding element, in that marketing side, I don't have any desire to personally brand myself on my artwork. So I think the artwork is a person will buy an artwork because there's something in it for them.
Yep.
Again, it might be supporting me because they know me, just like people supporting you. If do you have like a Patreon set up yet, or are you?
Not yet, but I really should set one up.
Yeah. So say say a Patreon, most people know what that's all about, but there's multiple reasons someone might support you. So you'll always see in Patreon or in Kickstarter or things like that, it'll be a low, just support me. You don't get anything extra, just support me. But you do get something extra. You get a sense of, I believe in this person, like I've followed you and Nathan since I sort of came across you. And I don't get a chance to listen to everything both of you say. You're very prolific, a pair of you. But I believe in supporting up and coming people who are having a go at something different and learning along the way, because we all love those Joe Rogans, or whoever. Not everyone loves Joe Rogan, but the top level podcaster or the top level game developer. But how do we bridge that gap? And that's the personal growth and actually, as you said, trying, just getting out there and giving it a try. And life is, I sound old, but life is short, and it spins me out to think that I'm 42 years old, because I don't feel at all that age. And I'm certainly not what I would consider mature. But I just, my biggest problem is I dig too many holes. I start too many projects, and I need to rein it in, which is another thing. I've got this going on, I've got this going on, I've got this going on, but I've only got so many hours in a day and so much energy as well. Like, you get tired. So it's also, again, about, once you get past the first stage of starting something new, is saying, okay, how can I make this manageable? So, you might set yourself a goal for your podcast where you say, I'm going to do a 2-hour podcast every day, and I'm going to write a blog entry on those people, and I'm going to create a top 5 tips for personal development. And you'll set yourself up with this huge amount of work where you'll just, it's unsustainable, which I know you talked a bit about that. I know you and Nathan about self-sabotage, and sometimes we can set unrealistic goals as well. So again, it ties back into this idea of the hero's journey being just hard enough that you will, and games as well, it's just difficult enough that you won't give up, but not too difficult that you'll give up. And that's in the classroom. Whenever I'm teaching anyone anything, it's the same deal. I make it just challenging enough that it's stimulating and challenging, but not too challenging where it goes in the bin. So in education, they talk about differentiating. So you'll adjust things, and it's challenging because you need to understand the student. But you put yourself in their shoes and say, well, I would like this to be scaled down a little bit for me, but also that I don't feel like I'm dumb, or because I'm sitting here, I'm a teenager, I'm comparing to others, and we do that as adults with social media. I wish I could run faster, jump higher, was better looking, whatever, had a higher IQ. But at the end of the day, I don't have any of those things, but I can foster a sense of self-worth, and that I respect you, I respect my work colleagues, I respect my family, but I also expect it in return, and I'm going to be there to support you. So, all this stuff can come from building relationships, even in the gaming world, like online gaming. You can be that guy who comes in and carries on and gets muted and blocked everywhere they go, or you can be that person who gets to know people and makes friends and possibly connections. You could end up doing a podcast with a gaming personality that and Yeah, I'm just spitballing. But if you're respectful of people and you'll be enjoyable to be around, and there could be a big break there for anyone who's able to mingle with people. Like I talk with a lot of the sort of the top people in the game I like playing, and they're just my friends, like, but they're some of them are involved in the development team, and I think, oh well, maybe one day I'll get some work in the development team for the game I enjoy playing.
Yeah.
But if I'm a dick about it, I'm not going to. So it's learning how to manage your own mood and the way you speak to people and all that as well. It's another part of the big hero's journey that you can get from gaming. Is not raging out and all that sort of thing. So
Yeah, definitely. I love what you're saying. I think it's really important that people kind of take a look at like life like that, right? Like there's so many opportunities in life where we can, you never know like what one action is going to lead to another action, right? Just like you're talking about, like, oh, you decided to start working in art and game development. Well, then also you start into like digital game development, and I think that's really cool how you're kind of like merging those two worlds, and you kind of got into that. Um, and yeah, I've just really enjoyed our conversation today. I think it's been really fascinating here about your perspective and your time in game development. I definitely want to check out your game and show you some support there. So I'll have to look it up on Steam, and then I'll put all your links down below because you have some really cool artwork. So if anyone wants to see what his artwork looks like, then make sure you check out that link down below. It's what's the name of the website? I'll definitely put it on the links, but just if people want to look it up
website.
now. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I've got the game website. I can send you a link to that, but it's littlebite.com.au. I'll just double check. And yeah, so little littlebYTE.com.au. And the game's called Lost Assassin, A Tale of AI Corruption. That's the name of the game. Awesome. So it's still early, still in reproduction, but I think the story behind it might be interesting to some, and to just try. Like, you never know what will come from it. You'll get better if you keep trying. That's the biggest thing, especially game development, and back up your files.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I definitely support some indie games. Playing a game called 30XX right now. Have you heard of that game?
Okay. I don't think so.
It's like a roguelike Mega Man game. It's kind of like a side scroll, kind of like you were talking about, like your game. Yep. Definitely. So your game definitely piqued my interest.
Oh yeah, it looks very much a Mega Man aesthetic, or Astro Boy aesthetic.
And so you can also just go to Steam and type in the name of your game as well too, right?
Yeah, it's on Steam as early access.
Awesome.
We're about to release the second chapter. There's one chapter, and then once we release the second chapter as the paid option, we're going to do what we've wanted to do, is release a playable free demo. But we want that demo to be, a lot more polished. And yeah, as I said earlier, we've remade a lot of things since the last update. So the player movement, he's got some new abilities like a dash, kind of a jetpack dash, and he can crouch, and the enemies can track and shoot you. So yeah, the playable early access version now doesn't have that yet, but once we've finished chapter 2, then we'll have some new weapons in chapter 2, some new minerals to mine, and yeah, we'll sort of more story elements and things. So yeah, we're reflecting on our feedback that we've been given, and we've gone into basically a review cycle now, and just adding in what's on our list, and that's a lot of work, but we want it to be the way we think it will be as a successful game. Whether it's financially successful, probably, who knows, probably not. but that doesn't matter. If we started a new game now, I've got ideas, but I have to just stay focused. It would be a lot quicker, like 10 times quicker to get going, because like even going from chapter 1 to chapter 2, the way I laid out the level, compared to now. I've planned it out in a very strategic way, and I want the narrative to go a certain way and the player to progress specifically, but the balancing and all that as well is important. So yeah, so you get, you know, buffed abilities as you go, you get minerals to mine, you get a bit of crafting, basic crafting at the moment, and yeah, all in a two-dimensional side-scrolling game. So it's sort of inspired by Super Metroid, and
Okay.
it's a game called, they did Barrow Trauma, but there's a game called Hidden Deep, which is a little exploration game. It controls a lot like that, and it's a mouse and keyboard game at the moment, but Michael has just told me recently that he's working on gamepad capability.
Nice.
But it has a crosshair that goes all over the map. So I'm not sure how he's going to work that, so that the mouse and keyboard controls are very similar to an FPS at the moment. So it's more of a PC game, obviously. But yeah, I could talk about this stuff for weeks, but yeah, I just hope it's been of some benefit to anyone who's made it this far and listened. Yeah, happy to just reach out to me if you want. I'm not officially any kind of advisory person, but yeah, certainly gotten a lot from our discussion as well. And yeah, I wish you all the best with everything, with your podcasts, and been quietly watching it grow, and same with Nathan, just seeing you guys out there, you know, doing something for your own benefit, but also for others. It's you know, need a lot more of it, and people supporting guys like yourself as well.
Thank you, Kane. Yeah, I really appreciate that, and yeah, I'll definitely check out your game, shoot some feedback. Anyone who's watching this, you said the game's the demo is it like a demo stage, or it's free right now?
Not yet, unfortunately. Okay. We have to do the next update, and then we're going to have a free demo. So if you wish list it, I'm not doing any real big plugs here, but if you wish list it on Steam, you'll get notification that there's an update, and there will be a free demo pretty soon. So yeah, there's a handful of weapons and a bit of exploration, but we're just tidying everything up and making it a bit more user friendly. Yeah, based on the feedback we've received. So yeah, don't think that, you know, when you leave feedback on a game on Twitter or on Steam or whatever, that people aren't listening. It's really valuable to get that feedback, and yeah, be obviously it's great to be constructive, but sometimes you just need to let them have it. And we're not an asset flip, as some call. One thing is, and it's one of those don't do this, it will take you too long pieces of advice that you hear a lot, is don't do everything yourself. We've made our own visuals, and Michael's written pretty much all of his own code, if not all his own code from scratch. Yeah, okay, for the sake of the game taking a long time to get to this stage, that's true, but we've learned a lot as well. And I have no doubt, if I was using assets and downloading them for free or paying for someone else to do it, I wouldn't know what I know now about designing game assets. So that's the benefit versus drawback, is it takes longer, but you get more out of it. Just like, yeah, in a game, you get, the higher the challenge, the greater the reward. So I now know my way around vector art programs and things a lot more than I did, and that is benefiting me in other ways, in other opportunities that have come up. So yeah, it's but yeah, it's a wish list sort of deal. You just wait if you want to wait. It will be a free demo, so you can just give it a try, and yeah, any feedback's greatly appreciated. Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in checking out the game. It sounds pretty cool. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really grateful to have you on, Kane. Once again, I did enjoy our conversation. It was really enlightening hearing more about like the game development process and what it's like for balancing. And I think a lot of other gamers probably would think the same, especially with like the whole, you know, there's just like, I think that's like a lot where like a lot of like the controversy comes on with games is like balancing, right? Like especially like the multiplayer games, so many people get like very frustrated with it, and it's just kind of cool to see the other side of it and what it looks like on the game developer side. So I appreciate you sharing that.
No, thanks a lot for having me. It's been great fun. Yeah.
Great. Awesome, guys. Well, make sure you guys shoot this a like, share it around, and shoot me a follow. And I hope you all have a good rest of your night.